This show is sponsored by Mighty Capital, the go-to venture capital firm for product-first companies like Airbnb and Amplitude. Learn why they are dubbed the best value for the dollar invested at mighty.capital. I'm SC Moadi, founder and chair of Products That Count, a 501c3 nonprofit engaging over 500,000 product managers. Our mission is simple: help you build great products through groundbreaking research, prestigious awards, and top-notch programming like this award-winning Top 1% podcast. Whether you're aiming to boost your career or turn your product team into a competitive advantage, this is your gateway. Visit productsthatcount.org and begin your product leadership journey. This particular series is hosted by one of the first chief product officers in the world, Renée Niemi, and each episode is a masterclass in product leadership. Renée, over to you.
Hi, today I have with me the CPO of the New York Times, Alex Hardiman. It's so great to see you. And let me just start by saying congratulations on being a finalist of our CPO award for 2024.
Thank you, Renée. And just thank you so much for considering me and most importantly, the New York Times. It's a real honor and I'm really, really proud of the work we're doing.
Well, I've really been looking forward to learning more about what product at the New York Times looks like and specifically your journey. I just can't wait to dive in. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind, 60 seconds or less, just a quick introduction and tell us what you do for the New York Times.
Happy to. So I am the Chief Product Officer at the New York Times, as you said. So that means that I oversee the company's consumer products. So products that hopefully you know, like our news product or games, cooking, and more. And these are the products that power our subscription and digital ad businesses. And when I think about what we're trying to do, we've got this portfolio of news and lifestyle products. And our ambition at the Times is to be the essential subscription for every curious person seeking to really understand and engage with the world around them. And then the other part of my job at the Times is that I lead our enterprise-wide approach to generative AI.
Wow, that's a lot. And I'm so excited to learn about how you're thinking about Gen AI and all of that. But we'll pause on that and transition to, this has been kind of a crazy journey that we've all been on. It started with a pandemic. Like, who could have predicted, right? Who could have predicted the pandemic? And all the impact on technology and how we do business. And then we moved right into what I will categorize as uncertain economic times. And we weren't even out of that before, OpenAI introduced the latest and greatest Gen AI, and it's completely grabbed everybody, by surprise on the acceleration in which we're starting to see adoption of not just Gen AI, but really elevating the visibility of our AI plans kind of across the board. I would love, kind of in this kind of environment, like, how are you thinking about your time and what's kind of on your agenda for this year?
I love this question. I think about my time almost as I think about a product, right? How can I spend time on the areas where I can really drive the most amount of impact? So I would say that I'm generally spending my time in two areas. The first is how to make the New York Times the essential subscription for millions more people around the world. And then the second is generative AI. So let me take the first part because they're linked. So for the first part, it's probably worth a step back, which is to say that our ambition at the New York Times is to get to 15 million subscribers by the end of 2027. And we're thinking about that as a mile marker that we're on the right path with just a lot of growth room ahead beyond that. And what I love about the New York Times is that we are a 173-year-old company that continuously reinvents itself to better meet a whole host of different news and life needs. And one of the reasons why I've been at the New York Times in two stints now for about 15 years is that I really believe that the New York Times has the ability to just mean so much more to so many more people. And so my teams and I are laser focused on value creation this year in service of that. And I would say that it really starts for us with kind of the fundamentals of product, where we really take a step back and humbly ask ourselves, who are we for? Who is our audience? And for us, our audience is made up of people who we call the curious. And there are many kind of subcomponents to what satisfies the curious. We look at our market and our total addressable audience of people who are not only open to the New York Times, but also willing to open their wallets and willing to pay for a subscription. And then with that, it becomes easier for us to look at our offerings to say, where can the Times credibly operate and really win to produce best-in-class products to penetrate that market? And that is how we've essentially nailed in on a category of news, games, sports, cooking, shopping, and audio. And our strategy overall, it has a couple of parts, which is first and foremost this year, especially in an election year. And, yesterday was just wild because
Oh my God.
the verdict came through. But
and by the way, for context, because we don't know who and when is going to be listening to this. This is the Donald Trump guilty verdict on the Stormy Daniels case.
Exactly. And so when that verdict came through, we really just saw, the New York Times, the machinery of the newsroom, and our product teams really show up and deliver incredibly important information at the speed of news. And so our strategy really centers first and foremost around making sure that we have the best and most reliable and trusted news destination in the world. And so news will always be the most central value that we create every single day. And we have this metaphor of the New York Times as a solar system, where news is essentially the sun. It is what gives life to the brand. It is the largest source of value. It is the largest source of high quality supply of original and independent news. And then with its light, it allows us to give birth to all of these other planets, planets like sports and games and cooking, et cetera, that allow us to then take the DNA of what makes for a great New York Times product and bring it into other facets of people's lives. And so we're really interested in news and then these other areas where we can appeal to people's passion and sense of joy and drive real world outcomes in their lives. And that is what, cooking a delicious recipe for your family looks like. That is what it looks like to rally around with a bunch of fans around your favorite sports team. It's what it looks like when I get very competitive with my family members, almost like silly competitive around who got connections first, which is one of our games. And so we really kind of lean into these elements of passion and community and fandom. And then the third element of the strategy is news, passion products, and then how we connect all of those into a family of products that really make sense so that you can come in through any product or any funnel, understand everything that we offer under the New York Times brand, and feel like we are meeting your news and life needs every single day, irrespective of the news cycle. So that is, I would say, that is the place of value creation and growth that first and foremost my team is maniacally focused on and where I'm spending my time. And then the second piece is around generative AI and how we envision the role of the New York Times and high quality journalism and content playing. And I'm happy to talk a lot more about that. We could spend hours just on generative AI alone.
Yeah, literally. I love it. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all that detail on how you frame and think about the New York Times. A lot of us just think of, the 100+ year old company as like, I still remember the paper copy and the logo. And, but I also love the innovation. I remember when newspapers were going digital and New York Times was like right in front of that and giving everything away free. For ages, you guys didn't even have to pay front on it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so brilliant to get people like addicted to your news, because your news is great. So I just love hearing this story on how you think about that. It's got to be a lot of fun innovating in a company that has a culture that supports it like that.
I have to admit, I feel like I have the best job in the world. I love it. It is hard, but it is so purposeful, and the talent and the teams who we have all focused on the mission and building a big business around that mission so we can keep investing in the journalism and the impact, it feels awesome.
Yeah. And I just want to underscore impact. I mean, to have a goal of 15 million, that's 15 million subscribers. And that doesn't really even count the number of visibility touches you have, right? There's people who aren't like paid subscribers that actually still your product touches. Um, you know, I personally always stayed in consumer electronics in that zone because I love that idea of massive impact. How important is that to you?
Well, it's incredibly important. One of the things that is really special about the New York Times is that we are a very mission-driven company, and we aim to create a giant business in order to support that mission, not the other way around. And so what that means is for us to really make sure that people have access to high quality, trustworthy information so that we can help seek the truth and help them understand, right, and engage with the world in really credible and important ways. We need to make sure that our information can travel widely and that people really do have access to the basics in times when they really most need it. So maintaining giant audience funnels for all of our products is really, really important. And we're always, trying to figure out the right balance between what we can make openly free and available to all, and then where there's certain value that is worth paying for, and where we do see just a different level of engagement, a different level of need, and more willingness to pay. But maintaining that is incredibly important and a big part of our mission and what we do every day. And that is impact. The other thing I'll say that I love about impact is journalistic impact is not just impact that you look at in terms of the weekly active users who come to your products, the number of subscribers, the amount of revenue and profitability. It's how we help that journalism travel to be able to drive real change in the world. And, when I think about some of the best reporters, where my team's job is to help their work get out to the right people, it's really inspiring. One of our Pulitzer Prize winners actually is a woman named Hannah Dreier, and she traveled the country for 2 years looking into the exploitation of child migrant workers. And this ultimately resulted in the Biden administration giving these kids a lot more support, and the Department of Labor actually stepping up its enforcement. And you saw companies really finally monitoring their night shifts where, they had children who were working, which is just, really honestly illegal and horrendous in terms of the conditions. And that's the type of impact that when you're a PM at the New York Times, you get to be a part of, which is just really unique and really, it's an extended definition of impact that I find to be purposeful and inspiring, and why a lot of PMs show up to the New York Times every day.
Yeah, I'm feeling inspired right now. I would love, and I know it's not your primary reason or why, if you will, but I would love to understand how you think about growth in context of product. Do you think of it both organic growth, inorganic growth, product-led growth? Like, I would just love some insights on that.
Happy to. It's a great question. So we years ago really led. We dove into the theory of the case around product-driven growth, and by product-driven growth in the context of our business, I mean using our own products and channels to acquire audiences, engage them, convert them, and retain them. And that has been a huge reason why we've been able to get to over 10 million subscribers today, and why I have a lot of conviction that we're going to get to at least 15 million subscribers by the end of 2027. And so that has been, I would say, one of the bigger shifts at the company over the last decade, and a very exciting and inspiring one. Product is really a central engine of growth for the company now. We know that we're a news organization, but we also really have internalized the fact that we are a news organization that builds products and software at the scale of the internet. And that has been a really big shift in our culture. But then once you kind of think about product-driven growth, we're very open to generating value through building organically and then also through buying in inorganic ways. And if you look at the portfolio, there are a couple of different examples of how we've done that. What's really important, though, is the build or buy piece is actually less important than us understanding what makes for a great New York Times product. And there are some shared elements in terms of the DNA of a great New York Times product. It always starts with the best high quality journalism, a trusted brand, a superior user experience that really helps unlock value for consumers to better engage with the world around them. And when you have those components, you can see that many of our products are homegrown, right? Like news or cooking. Those are beloved apps that we've built and scaled from the ground up. But then when we've seen giant demand from New York Times audiences for categories where historically we might not have had breadth and depth of content and talent and expertise, an area like sports, for instance, or shopping, that's where we've been, really open to going and acquiring brilliant properties. And so we bought The Athletic 2 years ago for the sports category, and then in shopping we acquired the Wirecutter. I want to say, don't quote me, but I want to say like maybe 8 years ago. And what we found is that because they share again the DNA of what makes for a great New York Times product, it's allowed us to stretch what the brand means to more people and just to address more needs in their daily lives. And then you have a product like games, which is kind of a really interesting mix of both. Do you actually know when we first published our first crossword? Take a guess. Any ideas?
Oh, it had to be a really long time ago. I'm going to say like 100 years ago.
I mean, not so far off. World War II, when
Okay.
it was such a moment of darkness in the country, and the Times said, we'd love to provide just a little bit of levity and an idea of smart fun where people are still spending their time well, but they're getting a little bit of a break from the chaos and the complexity of the world. And so the crossword has been around, for over 80 years now. And it's built up incredible brand equity that has led to other homegrown hits like Spelling Bee, which we've had for a while. But then Wordle came around, and we didn't make Wordle. We actually acquired Wordle. And Wordle was designed by this incredible engineer named Josh Wardle, who designed it off of his love of Spelling Bee and the mini crossword and the regular crossword. And so we were able to bring Wordle in and acquire it. And that just brought tens of millions of new people into the New York Times funnel who are playing Wordle every week. And then Wordle has been since driving more attention to other games. And it's this beautiful flywheel. So Wordle was a great place where we, took an inorganic element, we acquired it, brought it into a portfolio that we had already been kind of building up organically. And then we've been making more hits on top of that, like Connections and a new game called Strands, which is going to be coming out more widely this summer, which I'm so excited about. And that's where you can just kind of see that for us, it just starts with having the best games. And if we build or buy, we're open to it. But more than anything, we want to deliver just incredible value and make sure that people can come, have a joyful moment in games, and really feel like their time is well spent.
As you tell the story, so first of all, what a great story on the evolution of the crossword, and very, very smart strategically what the New York Times has done with some of these acquisitions. And I can't wait to see what Strand is all about. Now, how you had mentioned that this all enables the New York Times funnel. How does this all work together cohesively from your vantage point?
Yeah, so we think of we think of the bundle as a collection of products, a portfolio of products. And the beauty of each product is that they appeal to very distinct needs, right? Say news or sports or games that allow us to reach into the widest kind of outer limits of our addressable market. So that if with Wordle, for instance, or with Connections as a game, people might come in and they might not have been open to sports from us or cooking, but there's something about games that makes them think that, oh, the New York Times is a really interesting brand for me. So we're very happy to receive people in through a category and a daily need that really fits within their life. And then from there, we want to satisfy that need as best as we possibly can. and then cross-promote our funnels so that we can help introduce them to one other part across the bundle that we think will be very interesting for them. And we want to be very, careful and deliberate. If someone comes in for a fun game, we're not going to, immediately drive them to a live blog on the war in Gaza. That would be very disruptive, kind of a very, very kind of crazy experience. But when someone does come in for a game, maybe they would really love to go play the news quiz or the flashback trivia game. Like, we have all of these things that are adjacent to news, but still very much in that mindset of joyful fun and competitive communities. And that is where we're finding a lot of different ways to help somebody come in through one funnel, cross-promote them into another product. And from an economic perspective, that's incredibly important, because we find that when people do come in, and when they do buy the bundle, because they feel like there's enough value, they stay longer, they retain better, and they ultimately pay more over time. And the only thing you need to do to get enough economic value as a consumer out of paying for the bundle is to find value in 2 products. That kind of makes the price of the bundle worth it. And so even though we have a lot of different products within the bundle, as long as you find value every week with 1 or 2 products, you're good. And so we're really trying to be as thoughtful about the pathways between products to help you ultimately find the parts of the New York Times that really make your life more rewarding and more satisfying.
Nice. I'm going to go look at the bundle right after we get done talking here. I want to shift a little bit and get to know Alex a little bit better.
Sure.
And maybe the way we can do that is kind of draw back and think about your journey. I know for me, I think back so fondly. I actually refer to them as my children, my former products. But is there any product that you have ever worked on that you really think has had like outsized impact, either in the market, in the way that you think, or something that you're just like really, really proud of? Would love to hear that story.
Thank you. I would say that for me, it's less about a single product and more about how my teams and I used product to drive key moments of transformation for the New York Times. And so there are products that are very much underlying those transformations. But let me give you a few examples. I think one of the first ones that sounds like I think will resonate with you, just because you also grew up in the mobile space, was helping the New York Times shift from being very much a print-first product to a mobile-first product. When I first joined the company back in 2006, we did not have any mobile presence whatsoever. The iPhone 2G and the App Store were years away from launching. And so I really started investing in mobile, and it was first on the margins, felt kind of like a pirate leading this dinky little ship on the side. And then as we just really started seeing so much consumer attention and time shifting over towards smartphones, we were much more aggressively investing until we realized that we really needed to lead with mobile in almost everything that we did, from inventing new forms of journalism to new product features to new monetization opportunities. And I would say the thing that I'm most proud of there was not just the way that we were able to lead with mobile thinking across the product side, but really the cultural shift of bringing a multiple 1,000-person organization along for the ride. And there was this moment that I remember so clearly where, if you're a journalist and you're in a print-first world, the best sign that you're succeeding is when you get your headline on A1, which is the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And there was this really interesting moment with a few journalists where we were chatting, and I said, if you get a push notification for that story, you're going to reach like 5x the number of people than you would on the front page of the, of the newspaper. And just this moment of like, you could just sort of see people's kind of like eyes open and their minds expand, and their definition of journalistic impact and success really start to shift. And so that's such a small example, but those cultural pivots and moments for the New York Times are the things that I'm really proud of, and why one of the reasons why the company is just so on the forefront of thinking about digital transformation is core to who we are. And we want to make sure that we disrupt and transform ourselves before somebody else does it. And that's always kind of a part of how we operate, so that we make sure that we've got another 173 years ahead of us, because I think it's vital that the world and the country have the New York Times here. So that was like the first marker. Sorry, please hop in. You were going to say something.
No, please continue. I'm riveted.
No, I mean, the other big one is when we decided to introduce a subscription model. And we did that back in 2011. And when you think about subscription models in news now, it feels pretty common. Most news organizations, high quality news organizations, have some sort of consumer revenue stream. But back in 2011, the theory of the case really was that news is commodity. It should be free. It's like a utility. No one should pay for it, and no one would pay for it. And so that was another moment where we really said, okay, we need to focus on journalism that is worth paying for. And we need to build destinations that are so good that people are going to come to us directly by name. And this was going against the grain of, every sort of distribution channel and the unbundling of news. We said, no, we're going to keep bundling back news, and we're going to create products that must be so good that people are willing to open their wallets. And when we had consultants come in, I remember they said, you're not even going to get to 1 million subscribers in the lifetime of the New York Times. Like, this is insane. Good luck. And we said, we really have conviction that we can build products that are good enough to pay for. And so that was another moment where it really focused on the quality of the journalism and the product experience around it to, earn the right to ask people to pay. And, we're 13 years in and over 10 million subscribers strong. And so it's another thing that I'm very proud of. And I think it's helped create a paid market for journalism in a way that has also helped other big parts of the news industry, not just in the US, but around the world, find viable and sustainable paths forward.
Yeah. How important, by the way, when you kind of look at those two examples that you're proud of, how important were they together? Like, could you have gotten there had you not been that pirate on a pirate ship on the edge?
I don't think so. I mean, if we didn't have excellent mobile products, I think it would be hard to ask people to pay if they couldn't actually access our journalism on the products that they use the most in the channels. So I do think all of these things are interconnected. And if you now play it out to what I was describing as our current strategy, where we've stretched the New York Times to not just mean news, but to mean news and all of these lifestyle categories, the majority of that attention and that value is living on people's smartphones. And so all of these things are very interconnected, to your point, and product driven. They are product driven.
Right. And that just shows and demonstrates how important a well thought out product strategy is to growth, right? It all ties together. I would be remiss if I didn't start and ask you about AI, specifically in the world and the products you serve. It has got to have a massive impact. Would love your view specifically around where AI's biggest impact today is in your world.
And you mean specifically in the field of journalism?
Well, in journalism, or in your ability to deliver products.
Yeah. So let's talk about, these are great questions. Let's talk about it maybe first in the field of journalism in the New York Times. And then if you'd like, we can talk a little bit more about just the craft of product management and what it might mean. So for the New York Times, what I would say, generative AI has the potential to be one of the most powerful technologies leading the next chapter of the internet. And the announcements, even over the last couple of weeks from Google and OpenAI, are just really showing us all how multimodal models and newer interfaces are really shifting consumer adoption and just how people find and engage and consume with information. And from a journalism perspective, when I look back over the last 20 to 30 years, I'd say we've learned a lot as an industry during the shift from 1.0 to 2.0. And this time around, I think we feel like we can be more proactive and assertive about the role of high quality information in the ecosystem. And I say that because I think it is just so essential that we continue to create civic and economic value for the institution of journalism for decades to come, however the information ecosystem evolves. And so if technology like generative AI can help us do that, and I'm optimistic that it can, but I have some caveats, then we're going to look at how to best use it. And it really comes down to just being incredibly principled about our approach. And so I'd say there are broadly three things that are really driving the way that we're thinking about generative AI, its power and some of the risks, and how we want to use it. The first is that, unfortunately, generative AI is tilting more and more attention towards lower quality information, and in some cases even, misinformation. But against that backdrop, I do think that there will be even more need and hopefully more demand for original information that people can trust. And for the New York Times and for other quality news organizations and content creators, I just think that that's a huge opportunity to strengthen what differentiates us, which is human expertise at the scale of the internet. And when I think about some of what is so valuable about the New York Times, like no machine can replicate the dogged investigation of our reporters who go out and literally find information that does not want to be found in places other than the internet. Like that is one of the beautiful things that journalists do every single day. Machines can't replicate the fun and the creativity of games and puzzles. They can't replicate the human touch of curating recipes and films and music and books that satisfy a curious mind. And for me, that's actually quite inspiring because human-made content, I think, is what motivates direct relationships with publishers like the Times, and that's going to always be very important. But what gets exciting is when you can say, okay, how do I then use generative AI to proactively accelerate that impact? And how can generative AI help an organization like the New York Times become even more essential across the range of news and life needs that I was describing? And that's where there's a lot of interesting stuff that we're playing with. For instance, when we use LLMs responsibly against our journalism, we're starting to experiment with making our stories more accessible to more people by translating them into languages like Spanish, by translating them from text format into audio format. There's so many other ideas like that that are all about taking a unit of storytelling and reducing the barrier to entry for a lot more people around the world. And that's wildly exciting. There are a lot of monetization examples too, where we can just be so much more thoughtful about how we think about targeting ads, for instance. And that's a foundational capability, but potentially a very significant revenue driver that helps us again invest back in the journalism. How we work is another area where we've seen product managers, engineers, designers, and others find really great ways to use tools responsibly to remove some of the rote work from their lives so that they have more time for creative endeavors. So there's a lot to be optimistic about there. But the third piece, which is really important for creators of original content, is that for us to take advantage of generative AI, we also have to make sure that we can protect that very human expertise that I just described. And an organization like the Times just has an enormous amount of intellectual property that is quite high value and that we produce every day. And producing that work comes at great expense and often great risk. And so there are ways to build technology that comply with copyright law and provide for value exchange. And that is very much a part of our approach as well, because that is what will help fuel the next iteration of innovation and guarantee that when people are using LLMs, they can hopefully trust more of the information that they see on the other side. So that overall is kind of I would say the approach that we have. It is still very early. There's a lot to be seen. But I would say we're quite active in this space.
Wow, that's so much great information. And when you think about like transformations, I think mobile, the example you gave before, was a massive transformation for your industry. it feels like this could be yet another massive information because, we always talk about, data is the gold of the AI revolution, and the New York Times is the owner and the resource of so much data and information that can really fuel the future of AI. It's got to be almost like overwhelming and exciting, and every word you can use to be in the middle of that.
I have all of those feelings every day. Yes, that's fair to say.
Excellent. Well, listen, Alex, it's been so wonderful to get to know you, to get to know New York Times. I feel inspired. Like I said, I'm going to go look at that bundle right now. But it's just so fun to get kind of a peek on the inside and how you actually think about like literally the world's biggest and best newspaper in context of products. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, congratulations again.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Do you mind if I end with one more thing just about,
I would love it.
Not related to the New York Times, but when I do think about AI and product, because this is something that we're all just grappling with, I think it's been a really invigorating force in the field of product management. I think it is pushing all product managers to be more curious, more ambitious about the tech, more knowledgeable about its practical use cases and its limits, more open-minded about how the future of the information ecosystem will change, more humble about the fact that we don't yet know what native AI consumer interfaces will look like and more. I mean, it's putting us on our toes, but in a really, really good way. And it's not a moment to be academic about the tools and the models. It's a moment to be very practical. And so when I think about the best product managers and the moments where product really thrives, it's when you're focused on the craft of making and building. And this is a moment where I'm seeing this, and I really hope all other PMs really feel this, that AI is going to become, I think, a table stakes competency for PMs. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and how. And so those who are really leaning in and who are really entrepreneurial will have an early advantage. And there's something that Nilay Patel from The Verge said on a podcast a couple of weeks ago that really stuck with me. And it's the idea that AI isn't good at ideas, it's good at mimicking style. And so on the style front, there's a lot that AI can do as a PM. It can take the repeatable parts of the product development process and remove it or make it easier. Writing product briefs, analyzing consumer insights, and more. But the thing that Gen AI won't do, and the thing that I think is going to put more of a premium on great PMs, is where we use human input and our product sense and judgment and creativity and empathy. And I think that those skills will actually rise to the top and become even more important. And I think that that's just an incredible boon. Like, to be a product manager right now and to go solve huge problems at scale requires that level of creativity and judgment and taste and conviction. And I hope that we'll actually see more room from PMs to do more of that. And that's really exciting. The world needs more of that right now. And so I'm quite optimistic about that. And that's something that we're really paying close attention to. And as a career PM, just makes me so excited for the next generation of PMs. I think they're going to be more brilliant and more ambitious. And I can't wait to see what they'll do.
I'm really glad you brought this up, and I couldn't agree with you more. I often talk about this notion of product management being this really interesting intersection of art and science, and so much of what we do is creative and intuition based, and who knows what the future of AI holds, but today I absolutely agree with you. We should be leveraging AI as that assistant that we always wanted, and giving us time to actually like lean into that space that the AI can't fill, and go solve really meaningful customer problems. I love that. I think that is the perfect note to end on. Thanks again, Alex. It's just been such a wonderful conversation, and I hope we have many more to come.
Thank you so much, Renee. I really appreciate it.
This is SC Moadi again, founder and chair of Products That Count. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on your favorite platform, including Spotify and Apple. And please check out our other resources at productsthatcount.org. They're designed to accelerate your product career and make product the most important function in business. Until soon.